All right, welcome everybody to this episode of Breaking Absolutes. This one's different and in an exciting way. Usually I'm talking to musicians or even a couple of producers and sound engineers. Today I'm going to talk to Stephanie Cabral, who is a rock and metal photographer. I'll be honest, I wasn't familiar with Stephanie, at least as a name behind photos that I may have seen somewhere, until a friend of mine, Dagna Celestia, who actually plays in my band, Symphony North, mentioned Stephanie to me. And if you've known me very long, you know that I'm passionate about imagery, whether it's photography or illustration. And for a long time, every day I would look for new and unique imagery to post and talk about. And so when I found Stephanie's website and I started looking at her work, and I mentioned this to her a moment ago when we were chatting before the show. And this is such a cliche, but there is certain people, I call them artists, possess the quality to capture in film, or if they're an illustrative artist, something ineffable that communicates and tells story and it evokes emotion. Not all people who have a camera have that gift, regardless of how good the camera is. Stephanie has that. Like it kind of screams out of her imagery. They're just so evocative. And so I was excited after looking at her work to get to talk to her. So we're going to bring her on and get to know Stephanie a little bit. Hello, Stephanie.
What's up, Peter?
First, thanks for joining me. It's exciting for me to get to talk to somebody who, I mean, I can't even count the number of musicians that are favorites of mine that you are, I don't know, either must know or have come to you specifically because of your work. It's really quite stunning.
The coolest job on the planet, right?
Yeah. I was noticing, though, before we jump right into the actual stuff, I was looking at your LinkedIn page, which, I guess qualifies as trolling or stalking. That's not my intent. But this isn't the first music-related thing you've done. Before you were centrally a photographer, can you tell us a little bit about your backstory? Because I saw some stuff here that you were, I think, you were a music director. You actually worked in media relations at Sony. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I was like, oh, what does it say on LinkedIn? I haven't been on there in 100 years. I mean, most of the people that hire me know me. So I'm like, oh, what was on LinkedIn way back when? So straight out of college, I started working for Rip Magazine. I mean, I literally graduated on a Friday. I'd already been interning at Rip Magazine, which was, the heavy metal magazine in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah. And
so we're talking like 92, 93. And worked there eventually as the photo editor, but also shot photographs for them. Okay. And so then after the magazine started to crumble and the bad years of the Seattle scene, sorry, nothing personal.
Yeah.
I started working for Metal Blade Records and in PR. And then I worked at Sony Music in PR. And then from there, I worked at Yahoo Music as a music director. So programming radio stations, photographing bands, hiring bands to play different Yahoo Music events. Like way before Google, Yahoo was the only, search engine.
Yeah.
Way back in the 2000s.
Oh, I totally remember it. Yeah.
And in around 2008, when, Yahoo started to take a back seat to Google, is when I went out on my own and just did photography 100% full time. I'd always done it on the side. I got my degree in photography. I have an associate of arts degree in art photography. I have my bachelor's in photojournalism. So I've always been a photographer and something else, because being 100% freelance is scary shit sometimes.
Oh man, yeah.
Oh, am I allowed to cuss? Oops. Yeah. Scary stuff.
Oh, you can totally, you can cuss. Yeah, that's right. It's freelance. Anything carries with it its own uncertainty and burden. So kudos to you for was the switch to full time because you were just beginning to gain so much traction with the side gig, or did the other stuff dry up and so it was a forcing function?
No, I mean, I always felt like having a full-time 9 to 5 job with benefits and a 401k and all that stuff, like kind of fit my personality, but at the same time, it held me back creatively.
Yeah.
And once I was comfortable enough in my lifestyle where I could take a chance on making, my first year as a freelancer, I probably only made $30,000. So, that was way less than I was making at any of those major corporations.
Yeah.
So it was a little scary, but I had enough of a savings where I could build up my full-time photography career and let people know that I'm not just available on weekends and nights, I'm available 24/7. So that grew pretty quickly because everybody kind of already knew who I was in the music industry, at least in LA, from the companies I had worked with.
Right. Okay. Well, but from the beginning, photography was a passion and something that you'd actually studied kind of formally. And it grew into the central thing that you do. I want to switch now over to, let's actually start looking at some of the photography. And you've got, we'll pause right here. What's while you're known as a rock and metal photographer, it's not all you do, right?
Correct. I mean, I'll shoot anything for the right price. I do prefer, if I'm going to do a budget shoot, it better be a band I love or adore or friends. But, for example, I shot a lot for Yahoo when I was employed there. And then even after, they hired me as a freelance photographer for years after I left Yahoo. Yeah. So for example, Common was a Yahoo artist. So I did a session with Common, same thing with Hugh Laurie. But I was a huge House fan. So, getting to do actors. I have like Wayne Gretzky on my site. I did him for a Skechers ad because I knew somebody at Skechers. It's always relationships. I was with Adele in the studio because I was friends with the people at Sony Music from my time at working there, and she was a young artist. They wanted me to capture some photos of her in the studio when she was doing the 21 record.
Yeah.
So, but then there's people like Sacred Reich, what you're showing right now, who I've known Phil for probably 25 years and adore. And, he had me come out to Phoenix to do 3 different photo shoots with Sacred Reich for this last record.
Yeah. Well, I just want to look at this and we can stop and you can talk to me about it. But there's further down, we'll get into some of your live photography. Sounds like you principally do music but you have, it seems like a real balance between doing, I think, what you call session photography versus what you do live.
So I would say most people who get in photography especially music photography, start off live because it's easier. You're just pushing the button, capturing the scene. And that's what I did when I was a kid. I used to sneak my camera into concerts. I'd shove it down my pants and go to shows and take pictures of my favorite bands, buy a ticket, push to the front row. Once I got a little more accomplished and a little more comfortable, I mean, it's hard to pull somebody aside who, you might, for example, Chuck Billy, I had pictures of Testament on my wall in high school. And now I'm like, hey, Chuck, can you come here? Like, can you move a little differently? Like, it takes kind of a lot of like brass cojones to kind of push somebody around and direct somebody who you have idolized in your past. Right. So once I got a little bit more established as a photographer, I started doing more and more sessions and getting more and more like magazine and commercial work for album artwork and stuff like that. But definitely started off doing just shook my table. Starting off doing probably 90% live. And then the few sessions I did do were friends that had no budget. They were like, hey, like one of my first sessions was with Lizzie Borden. And it was like, hey, can you do a session? I was still in college. And we set up like a whole photo lab at my dorm and did a photo shoot in the living room and printed everything in a lab set up in the bathroom and did it kind of all DIY. And that's over 30 years. And I still did his last photo shoot for his last album.
Well, here's a question for you. There's a lot of these we'll look at that are in the session work that are they seem considered, like there's a composition I'm wondering, is this, how much of this is like you coming with creative thought around how to, evoke the image of the band or the feeling of the record or whatever, versus them sort of editorializing for you what it should be? Or is it some sort of mix of both?
I would like for it to be a mix of both. I always try and get a vibe or a feeling from the artist. Like, what do you want to, what ideas do you have? Do you have any ideas? Do you want a, evil look? Do you want a, poppy look, a colorful look? And I've had a wide range of wide range of ideas. Overkill's just do what you do. And they were stoked with all the images. They had a couple of images of, God, I think it was the Ramones that they gave me as an example of like the Ramones walking down the street. And we kind of mimicked that a little bit. And they ended up loving that image. It was different than this one. This one was later on at night under a bridge. I was like crawling in pigeon poop and didn't even realize what it was at the time. But like I use Joey Vera as a good example from Armored Saint, because Joey always comes with a big variety and a big idea. And usually it's like, shoot, can I actually do his idea? Like we did it's at the very bottom, but we did a Harky ad with Joey Vera where he wanted to be a zombie coming out of the ground. And we had his amps set up to look like a tombstone. And it was like fog and all this other stuff. And it was like, well, can we do this? I dug a hole in my backyard and we kind of did it very DIY style. Like, a lot of this stuff was way before Photoshop, like the typo negative photo you're showing there, like way before Photoshop. That was Pete's idea. So for example, he wanted to do with this moon bathing shot. That was totally his idea. And back to Joey and I work well together because he comes up with this crazy idea. And then how I execute it usually isn't 100% what he had in his mind, but he usually ends up liking it more. So how's that?
No, that's good. I mean, I guess it stands to reason that, each band, the approach is going to change. How much do you have situations where the label has input to this in any way, or is this something that you and the band are able to conceive and then it becomes part of the cycle?
Sometimes the label will give me direction, especially if it's more of a crossover artist. For example, I do a lot of shoots for Metal Blade Records. They have an artist that isn't so metal. They might say, hey, try and push them a little bit more in the direction of looking a little bit more metal. Or if like a band is known for always wearing their own band t-shirts, and the label would be like, try and get them not to wear the same t-shirts, or can you make the fat guy not look so fat? I mean, it's usually pretty minor coming from the label. It's more the artist. And then I always want to make them look the best they can. The collaborative, the typo negative photo was just reminding me, like one of my more recent shoots was a band called Witherfall, and it's probably 2 or 3 past this, but they were huge typo negative fans. And the singer came to me and said, I'm kind of thinking of like an October Rust photo shoot. And all these photos make me laugh because I can think of everyone. But
we'll go back.
Anyways, they were thinking, October Rust, typo negative. I mean, that record's got to be 20 plus years old at this point. But their record was Autumn's Curse. So they wanted it more like autumn colors instead of like the green and stuff like that. So it was a very high contrast photo shoot, but it was also 106 and in the middle of summer. So I went to get the leaves and stuff. I went to a craft store. I bought fake foliage, fake leaves. And then we lit them with like orange and red lights and made them kind of look, like an autumn kind of vibe. And I don't know if anybody would put 2 and 2 together. Was that the last photo? That it was, sorry, I'm still building my website. So to direct you on it, I'm a little clueless.
That's no sweat. We'll move around.
That's an Armored Saint photo shoot that Joey had the idea for, where he wanted the table to glow. And I actually built that table with a light underneath it to make it glow from underneath.
The reason I stopped here is because this was clearly an idea. You didn't arrive and just shoot because there was a glowing table.
Absolutely. This again was Joey Vera wanting a very like Mad Max old Western kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Lots of the extras in the background were all friends, spouses and stuff like
Fun.
that. The table, like I said, I built. And but then you have somebody like Dee Snider. He's like, just take a couple cool photos of me. I just need something real quick for my new record. And I was like, well, I love the glasses. Let's reflect those hands in those glasses. And that's, I think, the header for his website.
Yeah, that's a great image. Like you kind of stare at it for a minute and new little things pop out to you.
I mean, I was stepping on a step stool and I noticed you could see I had like a skull t-shirt on or something, and I could see my shirt in his glasses. And I was like, oh, we need to reflect something else other than me in those glasses to kind of give that dimension.
Well, I mean, he's such a character. Like you can just take a picture like this and it says everything about Dee you need it to say. But I love the detail. I love the fact that you've got you noticed this and you get to see these reflections. It's cool.
I mean, a lot of photographers, they capture what they see, like shooting live, you capture what you see.
Right.
The other aspect, especially with session work, is you have to create something that's not seen. For example, this photo of Dave Grohl, Corey Taylor, and Scott Ian was backstage at the Dime Bash charity event that they do every NAMM show usually. And Dave Grohl was doing his barbecue. And God, I think this was for Kerrang! And basically it was just like, I set up a blue light behind Dave because I wanted some depth. I just didn't want it to be a black background, but at the same time, I didn't want to distract from the three characters up front. Yeah. And I wanted to light the meat and everything. So like on location, but still trying to do a session. So kind of create something that, somebody with a point and shoot isn't going to get.
Yeah. Yeah. As a side note, it's become interesting to me to find out how many rock and metal musicians are such avid grillers.
Oh, I think he cares more about grilling than anything else. Guitar, drums, music, like that's definitely his passion.
Yeah. I had the same conversation with John Petrucci. He's like a huge griller now. So Chris Broderick, this is a great image.
So this was Guitar World. So Guitar World, for a long time, Jeff Kitts was the managing editor of Guitar World, and I had a really good relationship with him. And I was like, hey, you haven't done anything on Chris Broderick, and he has a new record coming out. And he's like, well, can you get me a shoot like within the next week? Absolutely. And I'm like, well, do you have any ideas? And he's like, I'm thinking fire would be good. I'm like, I will make it happen. So this is actually my sister's backyard. My sister lives in the country, and her husband is a firefighter, fire captain, actually. And we put gasoline on the ground and lit her backyard on fire. We had the neighbors calling, going, hey, do you know your pastor's on fire? And at one point, I probably shouldn't tell this since he is a firefighter, but I'm going to spill the beans. The gas can lit on fire. Oh, no. And he went to blow it out, and it just, he swung the gas can and just flung flames on Chris's guitar, or towards Chris's guitars, towards my camera gear. He's like, I put out fires. I'm like, ah.
Wow, the
image just came out great.
That's a metal story.
Oh, absolutely. We're like, oh my gosh.
Lighting stuff on fire, almost creating incendiary bombs.
Yes, we had fire extinguishers and hoses out there, but for a second there, we were all a little nervous.
Yeah, that's the risk, man. That's I love these guys. This is a band that I don't think gets nearly as much attention as they deserve. This is a very this is a composed image. Yeah. Or did you have this
Absolutely.
idea, or did they come?
So this was both of our ideas, I would say. They had an album cover that had a guy with a gas mask and a cowboy hat. And for a promo photo, I'm like, well, do you guys want to kind of recreate that photo? So I, brought in the magenta lights and the orange lights and lit them kind of in a similar way to what I knew their album cover was going to be. And I'm kind of known for not doing a lot of photoshopping. Like I'll touch up somebody's zits or, make somebody a little thinner or something like that. But I don't do a lot of processing on most of my shots. Yeah. So I put in the star background, but other than that, I try and do everything in the camera. And that was the only image. I gave it to them as an example and said, what do you guys think? And they're like, that's great. That's our promo photo. So I only had to do it the one time. But yeah, very much conceived photo on their part.
It's really cool though.
Dane brought the gas mask. Like they had all the props. They brought the hats from like the dollar store or something.
Yeah, but even the way you've lit it is so that we see the tips of the front, the brim. We're seeing these circles. You know, I mean, there's just a lot of, you know, I don't know how much of that is intuitive and how much like you're actually trying to make sure you see that in the camera, but it creates an image that I think is really visually interesting.
So I would say a lot of that too is trial and error. Like I could set up the lights how I think it's going to work, and then I'll do a test shot, and I'm like, oh, which is definitely a skill. Like on the fly with artists watching you, you got to be able to turn the dials on the lights, you know, turn them up or turn them down, move the lights, and add the gels and make it look great. And I just got done saying I don't do a lot of photoshopping, and here's another Photoshop photo. But this is just kind of an overlaid filter. Anders from In Flames really liked, he kept telling me the vintage look, and I kept thinking he meant like 1800s photography, like sepia tone. And then it came back, he really wanted like 70s. He was thinking 70s was like vintage photos. So I kind of just put like a 70s filter over it, and they love that. This was just like a quick photo in New York dressing room that they wanted to do a new photo with the new lineup.
No, I'm glad. I'm actually glad we're looking and talking about this, because I think it just shows another tool in your tool belt as far as being able to create cool images.
Right, like, you know, Galactic Cowboys totally set up. In Flames, just a quick, you know, no lighting, just them in the dressing room, and then After Effects. Whereas Zach Wilde, I did this for this was for Metal Hammer, who I should plug them. I'm like, I primarily shoot for Metal Hammer and their sister publications. So they're my main bread and butter. Of course, I shoot for whoever wants to hire me, but this was a Metal Hammer shoot. They sent me to Zach Wilde's house, which is crazy in itself and impossible to find. And there's no cell service and no GPS that goes to his house. But I finally found it, and he had some ideas, and we went to his places and his ideas. And this was like the very last, like 5 minutes of the shoot. I'm like, hey, can we really just like take a couple on the top of your mountaintop? The sun is behind his head, so it's lighting up his hair. And I had just like one softbox in front of him to light him up so he wasn't a silhouette. I like the way the clouds look. And he's such a big presence that I really like the way that this photo came out. And then come to find out, all the photos that he sort of directed looked exactly like his previous shoot for his album art. So I was like, well, at least I got something different by kind of steering him in my direction for a couple shots.
No, this is, I love this. I mean, even the way that you've captured all the clouds behind him, you know, it sort of centralizes him in the picture. It's a great image. And by the way, I don't know if these are veins.
I believe those are veins. He has that very Thor-like, you know, holding his guitar, like, you know.
Yeah, he's literally looks like he's wielding an axe.
Thor's hammer.
Yeah, or his hammer, yeah. That's exactly right. We looked at this one. Tell me, I'm going to fast forward.
Go for it.
We actually, it's switching on us.
Well, there was
okay, here we are. Now I'm going forward.
One of my favorite shoots, Alice Cooper.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Are those stilettos? What's he holding?
The throwing knives. So again, this was another Metal Hammer feature. They used to do a piece called The Houses of the Unholy, which is musicians and their other hobbies. So for example, Alice Cooper would warm up for a show by throwing knives at a target. So we got him backstage throwing knives, and then he posed for right before he went on stage because he was makeup ready. So I think I was able to get off 6 shots before he went out on stage. So it was like management's like, you better be ready because you're not going to have a lot of time. So I had the writer from Metal Hammer stand in, took a bunch of photos of him. I had it exactly how I wanted. This was the typo negative shot I was talking about. So I had him exactly like I wanted. So literally he came in, it was bang, bang, bang. And then they're like, okay, you're done. So luckily I got the shot.
You know, the other thing that's occurring to me as I hear you tell all this backstory is you're getting this window into this world that probably isn't widely reported or known. I feel like I know Alice Cooper pretty well, but I never knew he threw throwing knives to like work himself up for a show.
Right? Exactly.
How cool. There's Chris Cornell. He's from my neck of the woods.
That was a Yahoo shoot, most definitely. And we were actually back by like a garbage dumpster, and this was still on slide film. So what I did with this is I had like just like a flash on the camera with a cable. So I kind of, you know, generic kind of studio lighting, but that way I could blow out the background. And I wanted this kind of high contrast image on him.
Yeah.
And it definitely works on him. I've had other artists tell me, can you make me look like Chris Cornell? No.
Yeah.
He has some natural genes that worked in his favor.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Here's this image you were telling us about.
That was the Witherfall image where, yeah, they definitely, the singer Joseph wanted to have that Typo Negative feel without being a total ripoff, but I was a huge Typo Negative fan, and so I knew exactly what he meant. So.
Yeah. The first time I heard those guys, they were opening for Queensryche at the Gorge, which is a big venue here in Eastern Washington. Blown away by those guys.
Typo Negative open for Queensryche?
Yeah.
Wow, that would
there's this venue in sort of mid to Eastern Washington that they call it the Gorge. That you look at the stage, just behind it is this huge. It's like not as that scale with the Grand Canyon, but it gives you that feeling. And they do these concerts in the summer when the weather's good, and I didn't even know who Typo Negative was when I saw them open for Queensryche. It's a big deal. They're really good.
That's awesome.
Oh man, Michael Schenker.
So I had these two together because I kind of both gave them that like cross-process treatment. Michael Schenker, legend, a little on the older side of some of the musicians I shoot.
Sure.
So I wanted to, you know, give it a little bit of a treatment just to hide any, you know, little blemishes that might show.
Sure.
But it works really well with clouds. So Sacred Reich, this was the last shoot I did with Jason Rainey before he passed away. And then Michael, and you got the cool clouds behind them. And then with Michael Schenker, yeah, I get the call like, would you be interested in shooting this artist? His name is Michael Schenker. He's known for, and I'm like, you can stop right there. I know who Michael Schenker is.
That's the kind of photographer you want. There's a lot of good photographers, but you want someone both with the ability, but I think having the working knowledge of the genre has to be just a huge, huge plus for any band that wants to have you work with them.
And I'm pretty sure the person started saying like he was in the Scorpions. I was like 40 years ago. Like, come on.
That's someone who doesn't know, but they're like reading the bio information.
Right. Or Wikipedia. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's so funny.
So this was another Metal Hammer shoot, Five Finger Death Punch. This was in the Milwaukee, what's that place called? The Rave, I think. The Rave. Eagles Ballroom. I think it's both names. It's like a big building, but there's an underground swimming pool. And even though you can't really see the swimming pool, I know it's there. So I had all my portable lighting. So I had like a red gel, like behind them and up on the ceiling to kind of give a little bit of depth. And I had a pretty wide angle lens. So when they're looking into the camera, it gives you that kind of, you know, distorted look. But I always loved this shot. And it was, I probably had 10 minutes with the band before they were getting ready to go on stage.
Yeah. Is it often like that where like they're scheduled so tightly that you have to slip in, or is that rare?
So I would say it depends on what it's for. If it's a magazine feature, a lot of times the artist has, hey, you can, you know, writer can get a half an hour with the band at sound check, photographer gets 10 minutes before they go on stage so they all look nice. If it's a session for the band, like the Typo Negative shoot was for them, I have it as long as they'll give me. Yeah. And, you know, or for Witherfall or for Armored Saint or Sacred Reich, even Michael Schenker, that was all for them. So I have, or Devil Driver. So the time is kind of unlimited to whatever they want to give you if it's for them.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. Is this actual water falling down?
It is. This is a band called the Mendenhall Experiment, and they actually did a documentary on the guy on the right. is Brandon Mendenhall, and he has cerebral palsy. So they did a whole documentary on how he's trying to rehabilitate his hand by playing guitar. And he does a lot of like Barcodes and loves Corn, and they run Mayhem Fest. But they wanted to do a new photo shoot because they got a new singer. And we did a whole day photo shoot because, again, it's their time. I'm like, hey, it's like, I'm on your dime. We're booking the whole day. Let's do this shoot. And the studio we were at actually had a rain room. This room is normally used for girls in bikinis on, hot rods and see-through tops. It's very like sexist, but I was like, it's kind of cool. Like guys with long hair, they like swing their hair in the water.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, last shot of the night. It was probably 10 or 11 o'clock at night when we did this, and they all got drenched and had to go home. And I think the singer's hair was wet for 3 days, and they all had wet shoes and that kind of thing. But I loved it. I lit it from behind and a super fast shutter speed, which captures the motion of the water droplets. I just like the way it looked.
So it leads me to a question. You touched on something there, the idea of taboo, a little bit. There's certainly history with metal of imagery that sort of pushes people's buttons, violates expectations. Have you done work where, either the artist was asking or you had an idea for something that was going to be provocative and maybe even controversial? Or do you steer clear of that?
I would say I'm the type of person that I'm really hard to offend. And if an artist wants to do something, I'm totally down for it. Rarely is it sexual, because what guy wants to be half naked? 90% of the metal bands are guys, and me being a female photographer, that would be weird. So, but they're like, I did a shoot with Chris Barnes, formerly of Cannibal Corpse, where he just wanted to be covered in blood. So we were actually at the Metal Blade offices. We went to the executive bathroom shower, which was covered in marble tile, which neither one of us really knew at the time that it was like expensive marble. And we just had fake blood all over him. And they used it for ads. They used it for all sorts of stuff for his 6 Feet Under record. And we love those photos. And, some people thought it was a little gory and stuff, but it was stage blood. It was no big deal. The worst part is me and him afterwards with like toothbrushes in the grout trying to clean all the blood out of the Metal Blade office bathrooms. I got a little bit of trouble for it. Not too bad, but a little bit.
These are just so good, Stephanie.
My boys. Thank you. I love Death Angel. So this is another like friend family. Like when I was, they're not much older than I am, but when I was a teenager, like in high school, Death Angel was like my favorite band. So as I got older and I got to meet them, I was like, hey, I want to shoot you. I want to do this. And, I'll get you up on Yahoo. And I would just try and do as much as I could with them. And so then Rob hired me for the last couple of session photo shoots. And this was actually at the brewery that makes the Death Angel beer was kind enough to let us use their facility to do photos. So we have a lot of photos inside. The problem is that it was winter and that black sky was actually that black. It was rainy. It was horrible weather. And so we couldn't really go on location anywhere. We had done shoots in the past, like by the San Francisco Bay Bridge and stuff like that with lights in the background. That was beautiful. For this, they had a garage door that we opened up, and I had my lights set right inside the rain. And as soon as it stopped raining for like 5 minutes, we pushed everything outside. We're 3 feet outside of the door and shot against that sky, because I love a sky photo. When you light the subject and have the sky in the background, it's some of my favorite stuff. Yeah. Russ Halfing used to do a lot of that stuff. And as a kid, I always just thought the look is so cool because it's something you can't do with an iPhone. You can't do, with a point and shoot camera. You really have to have like some studio lights to be able to kind of get this effect.
Yeah.
So
love it. As you're talking, it's the question comes to mind. How much of how you think about capturing a band, particularly, I guess, when it's session work or maybe even for a feature, is informed by what you know about the music itself, or are those independent things that don't have to be co-considered?
I usually try and do my research. So I would say it's definitely considered. Like, I can take photos of, you know, a female, or like, let's say Floor from Nightwish. I did a session with her a long time ago when she was in After Forever. And, it's more soft, it's more pretty. A band like Black Veil Brides, it's going to be a little bit more cartoony than, say, like Nurgle from Behemoth. Like, he might be a goofball off stage, but when he's in makeup and wants to, present himself, he wants to be black metal.
Yeah.
So I definitely try and consider the music, but, and again, I will also ask, like I asked, oh my gosh, I'm having a brain fart. The singer of Killswitch Engage.
Which one?
Not Howard.
Jesse.
Jesse, thank you. Oh my gosh. My memory is horrible. The older
So
I
is
get.
mine. I lucked out.
I was telling everybody, sometimes I'm just like, okay, now give me, a lot of rock guys just make me look cool.
Yeah.
So I was like, Jesse, give me like an evil face. And he's like, no, I can give you a mean face, but I can't be evil. I'm not an evil person. I'm like, okay. So sometimes I just have to change what I say, but I thought that was pretty interesting. He's like, no, I won't do evil.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. This is not 100% related, but like he and Howard are good friends, and they both live a real clean lifestyle. But oftentimes the music stylings don't necessarily reflect the person, that lives outside the music. So
right.
It's interesting. That's an interesting behind the scenes look at, because a lot of that music is really aggressive. So I can see where you might say, like, let's try and capture some of that.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
I'm glad you're asking me about specific photos, because I feel like I have a story with every photo.
You do. Yeah, you do.
So the Danzig photo was backstage at the Danzig Fest. It was a John Reese festival, and they had a lot of like circus performers and stuff like that. And I think I was approved to shoot Glenn. I got like 5 minutes with him backstage. This is during the day, but again, it's you can set your camera so it basically underexposes the background, so it looks like night, and you can see the reflection in his glasses of a little softbox portable lighting that I had brought out, battery packs and everything.
Yeah.
And we've got an audience of probably 30 people backstage all watching us. So at the same time, I've got to direct Glenn. I've got to light him flattering, and make sure that he likes it. And he went over my shoulder and went, okay, I like that shot. Now delete everything else. I'm like, are you serious? He's like, yes, I want to see you delete everything else. Those are not approved. Okay. It's whatever the artist wants.
Sure.
So I was approved. That was the shot for Metal Hammer. The shot on the left, Suicide Silence, who I love those guys. I see them around at shows all the time. They're friends with the Death Angel guys. So I met them at a Death Angel show to begin with. So I was really happy that we got to work together. They had this idea, and they had a band in mind that they loved this photo of this band, and they're like, we want to recreate it and see if anybody notices. And to my knowledge, no one has ever like figured out that this is a parody photo.
Oh, wow.
And I even put it side by side with the original photo, and they went on tour with this band that they were parodying the photo, and they used this photo, and still nobody picked up on it. So it was kind of like an inside joke with me and the band, that knowing that they were parodying a semi-famous photo that they grew up liking.
So here, based on that last backstory you told us, it makes me wonder. And I don't want to overgeneralize, but do you find with a lot of the rock and metal artists that they're less concerned with sort of managing the image, and they're a little bit more carefree, or it is in most cases they really do want to have certainty around how they're being depicted?
It's case by case. Some people don't care, and other people are very particular. Usually it's the younger and the better looking the artist, the less they care.
Yeah.
That's a good generalization. I did a shoot with Mike Portnoy's son's band, Max. The band is called Tala.
Yeah.
And they're all young kids. I gave them all the photos and they didn't even have me touch up one single thing. And that almost never happens. I was like, oh, I love shooting 20-year-olds. You shoot artists in their 60s and they're like, can you get rid of the crow's feet? And can you, and it's stuff you didn't have to do 25 years ago before Photoshop, made everybody look like a Barbie doll.
Let me ask you, do you think the fans of, I don't want to overgeneralize in this way, but my instinct is that a lot of the groups that are older, they have an established audience. It's not necessarily going to be that they're out there really desperately trying to grow their audience. And that may not be a true statement, but to the degree that it's true, do you think that the hyper focus on a crow's feet or making sure they don't look 10 pounds bigger than they are is, unnecessary? Because the fan base, I think about it for myself, and yeah, I know that if I go to a Motley Crue concert, Vince Neil's not going to look like he did when he was playing the Whiskey, but I really don't care. I just want to see the band and have a good time. So do you think the fans that are viewing these photos for these older bands, do you think that if it were not touched up, they would give a damn?
Probably not, but I think it's one of those things when everybody else is being so touched up that if you're not touched up, then you look way worse in comparison. And regardless if you're in a band or not, everybody wants to get a picture and go, "Ooh, I look good."
Yeah, that's
no one wants to go, So
it's a really interesting thing to me because I've been thinking a lot about fandom lately. And when I become a fan of a band, it'll be true that I like some albums or some tracks more or less than others, but I don't ever like fall out of love with the band on that basis. I usually fall in love with them as artists and follow them. And to that end, like my favorite group is Dream Theater. And I've seen some really funny memes on some of the guys now that they're older. And it went from, the full hair to like, now what do they call it? The skullet.
I was gonna say Devin Townsend, worship the skullet.
Right. But the thing is whenever I look at those guys, I actually don't see how much hair or not hair or how big, or I don't see any of that. I just see the artist that I love. And it's usually in concert with the fact that there's new music or something. Would I be considered atypical?
I would agree with you. No one's going to think it's, and I fall into that same category. I'll see a great picture and then the artist will be like, "Ooh, but I look bad." And I'm like, "I think you look great." Yeah. But everybody sees themselves in a different kind of mirror, Yeah. Even right now, I keep looking at myself. I was like, "Whoa, look at that gray."
Oh, you look great. You look great.
Thanks. But everybody does that no matter what you do. Yeah. Do I look fat? And everybody's got their own insecurities. Females don't want to look heavy, whereas like Dino on the right, you got Fear Factory. Dino Cazares, he's like, "I don't care if people call me fat. I know what size I am." So he has no problem with the way he looks. But then you have other people that are like, "Ugh," and they're borderline, like, maybe 5 pounds overweight, or they have bad acne skin or whatever. That's, please fix it. It's just, I think it's an insecurity more than wanting to be an egomaniac.
Would you, I don't want to drift into anything too political, but do you think that there's still a degree to which female rock and metal artists, they're over sexualized, or there's an expectation there that's unfair?
Absolutely. Okay. Come on.
I don't want to make assumptions about anything. I'd like to think that that's not true, but you're working on the front lines with these people as they're managing their image, so you're a good person to ask.
I mean, name a female metal musician that her looks aren't commented on. They're either hot or they're gross. There's nothing in between, you know?
Yeah. And I won't name names because that would be indiscreet, but I can think of some female vocalists in rock and metal who are, they're not 20 somethings. And so you could make a very blatant sort of callous comment about relative beauty, but for me, and maybe this is just me, and I don't hold this up as being a virtue and placing me different than other people in terms of how I regard musicians. But I see that these women that I'm seeing in my head in the same way I see John Petrucci or any of those guys. When I see them at whatever stage of life, whatever poundage or, whatever they're wearing, I see the musician. And so I just stipulate to all of the other stuff being unimportant.
Well, that's very big of you. My view is, and I'm very cynical. My view is when I was young, there was pretty much two metal females, and it was Doro and it was Lita Ford, and it was always who's hotter, Oh, okay. And now you have a variety. But even if you look at a band like, say, Heart, Ann Wilson, how many times does she have to hear how fat she is? Doesn't matter how incredible her voice is. Yeah. She's always going to hear she's fat, right?
We got to change that. I hate to get on a soapbox here, but I trained with the same vocal trainer that Ann trained with. And so I grew up sort of just absolutely in adoration of her gift as a singer. I could give a damn about the rest of it. But having said that's true. And having said that, I get it, and bands have image and it's cool to look cool. And do all of those things, but that ought to be part of the fun for us. That if someone like you can capture someone looking cool or doing something interesting or artistic or crazy, without there needing to be cynicism about it. It saddens me to hear that that's as big a thing as it sounds like it still is.
I mean, maybe I'm jaded, but I would definitely think, the majority of the females I can think of are fairly attractive, and they put that forward. Use what you got, right?
Yeah.
Pete Steele, typo negative, he was on the cover of Playgirl, because he worked out and he was 6'6", and he was like, male specimen, in the same way that, Revolver always did the hottest chicks in metal, which sounds disgusting, but I'm sure it was their biggest selling, issue, because 95% of the metal audience is horny teenage boys, so of course, are you going to have, a female who is attractive not present herself in an attractive way?
Yeah. No.
Use what you got.
I guess maybe I didn't say it well enough. Maybe what I'm thinking is that part of what makes these women and these guys who are doing this sexy is not all about the looks. Like part of what and I've heard some women say this, part of what attracts some women to some of the artists isn't like how attractive they are. Because let's be honest, there's plenty of metal guys who are they don't resemble like platonic pulchritude. But what attracts them is the talent and the artistry and that sort of thing. For me, the same holds true as I regard women that are in metal. So sometimes that's the first thing I see. And then my deeper question, or maybe my shallower question, is it okay? Is it like, it's rock and roll, it's metal, part of it is about appearance and image. Is it okay that some of this be sexy for sexy sake?
I say use what you got.
Yeah.
So if you have, a hot alt rock female in the front end of your band, use her. If you're metro girly looking Black Veil Brides, and use it. If you're just talented, or if you got great biceps, use them. Yeah. Yeah. Whatever puts the best foot forward.
I guess anything that can potentially give someone a reason to listen to your music, if the argument is that ultimately these folks, like I remember listening to Bobby Dahl say one time, like, we never wanted to be musicians, we just want to be rock stars.
Right.
And so there's that thing. There's some people who they just want to, and that's fine. That's a thing. But I think if you ask many of these folks that we've talked about and seen pictures of, they're musicians. They want to make music that people are going to care about. And so anything that you would do that might incentivize them to take a listen, you should do that, right? Because then hopefully they'll fall in love with. I remember the first time I heard the name Skid Row. I thought, that's the stupidest name for a band on the planet. Like, no one's going to want to listen to that. And then I heard the first cut and I was like, holy cow, right? And now I don't think about the name as being this sort of weird back alley, grimy place, I think about the really cool music that Skid Row makes. So
Right.
I think you're right. I think you use what you can, and then part of your role is to help bring that forward, give people a visual that can bring them in to the music, because you're probably very often like the tip of the spear, especially with new bands.
I would say, I mean, a lot of people judge a book by a cover. So if they're glancing through a magazine and they're like, oh, that band looks kind of cool, ooh, what's that? I want to check that out.
Absolutely.
Or, you can instantly look at a band and say, oh, they're death metal, or they're black metal, or, obviously John Five is a guitar player because he's got the, lava lamp guitar right there.
Yeah. Well, I remember, like, I'm old enough to remember when the central way that we got images from folks like you was in magazines. And so we'd rush to get the newest so that we could kind of look. And a lot of it was performance shots. And I loved those. I loved nothing
Right.
better than to see Jeff Tate caught mid-scream and to see what he looked like as he was giving everything to that note. And I'm not the only person like that. So what you do is so important to not just the artists that you're covering, but to the people, to the fans. It is the thing that's like, it is, it's not the music itself, but it is, I think, an integral way that people are participating and responding with the group. I don't think I'm unique in this regard. I see Jeff Bridges here, which is super cool.
It's funny you say that about the photos. And as a kid, a teen, my walls in my bedroom were plastered with 80s metal bands. And I was actually the exact opposite. I had lots of live photos and lots of session photos. But what I really liked about the session photos is that connection. You have the artist looking into the camera,
yeah.
And it was that connection. Whereas a live photo, I felt like one of many that was looking upon this person on stage. Whereas a session shot, I felt like they were looking at me. So yeah. I think that it still holds true. Like if I can get an artist on stage to look at me, then that picture goes up tenfold.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting to hear you talk about that, because I see exactly what you mean. But I think that's the beauty of like the various ways that you shoot. We haven't really looked very much at in fact, we should just go down. Is there anything specific you want us to look at that?
I don't know. They're like kids. I love them all. I talked about Lady Gaga. I put Tim McGraw in there just because you got to have some other people. And I liked House, and Hugh Laurie was cool. And
let's go down to some of your live stuff here. There you go. One's looking right at you.
Yeah, exactly. So I was doing a shoot with Black Veil Brides. I did for a while there. Metal Hammer was doing a lot of stuff with Black Veil Brides. I had a wide angle lens, and they're one of those bands like Kiss or Motley Crue that will pose for you. He came to the edge of the stage. I had the smoke going off, and I had like a super fisheye lens. Actually, I had two cameras on, so I pulled up the fisheye, and he posed for me. So it was great.
What else? Oh, that's a great one.
And of course, access. I've done a few like photography seminars for people. And what I always say is access is key. If you have access, you better use it. So getting up on the drum riser, like the last one was a Hailstorm, I think at the Revolver Golden Gods. This was a Machine Head show. And I'm actually up on like a 5-foot platform. Not this one, but this one. And Dave McClain was like, just don't fall off. I'm like standing on like a little 6-inch piece of his drum riser, like hoping not to fall. But I wanted to make sure I got Rob in the front round and the crowd as well. Drummer shots are always hard unless you get access.
No, and I love the color of that.
Thank you. I always try and ask.
Do you would it be overthinking to say or that, as usually a light show are set in scenes? And so there's certain color configurations and placement, that the LD will have. Am I overthinking that you would like come to know what some of those are in order for you to capture an image when it's going to be lit up all gold like this?
No, that's absolutely true. Like a lot of bands, LD has like a rhythm. Well, they'll, red, 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 and then they'll do yellow, 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 and then blue, red, and so you can kind of like, in the same way the beat of the music pick up when they're going to flash that certain light. And, getting a drummer shot, a lot of times it's really dark where they're at, so you kind of time it, or, when the singer's going to take a jump, you can kind of feel like bump, bump, and then, he's going to jump. I do a lot of I love my 16 millimeter fisheye lens. So Robert Trujillo on the left, I think his head's cut off a little bit, but
oh, that's me. I can fix that.
Oh, that's all right. But then the one of Iggy Pop on the right, was always one of my favorite shots. I mean, my camera is pretty much at his crotch, which is gross. But the fan reaching over my head to try and touch Iggy is what made that shot one of my favorites.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this just pops into my head. Is there an artist or a band you've not had the chance to work with that you really want to?
Ooh. I mean, I could always work again.
It's hard to imagine
I've pretty much, between live and session, I've pretty much shot every band I've ever loved or wanted to shoot that I could think of, unless, of course, somebody's passed away or something. I would more sessions, I would love to do a full-on session with Metallica. I've never done that. I've done Robert Trujillo. I've done some stuff with Kirk Hammett, but not the whole band together.
Yeah. These are all really great.
Oh, thanks. So trying to put some variety in there. I worked with Jeff Beck for a while, and his manager pulled some of my shots for an ad. And then, Jeff Hanneman, it's always was great to shoot. I had to pull out some older photos just to show how long I've been doing it. So this was an Aerosmith photo.
Yeah.
Blockbuster Pavilion, probably early 90s.
Oh, check that out. That's a great shot.
And again, if you get the artist to look at you, that always works. I have a shot, I think, in there too, of Ozzy, where I was the only approved photographer. I had to get all my shots approved by management and PR team, but he basically saw I was the only photographer out there, and he gave me the winky face and thumb up. And I was Ozzy gave me a thumbs up.
Yeah, these are all so good.
Oh, why, thank you.
Folks who are listen to this podcast, this isn't gonna do it justice. You need to watch the replay of this that we'll put out on YouTube and other places, because it's such a visual medium, to I think to get the full effect of the things we're discussing here. But we're going through her live stuff.
It's hard to talk about photography without actually seeing the photos.
Yeah, it's so central. Oh, wow.
I mean, for example, King Diamond looks like he's looking right at me, but this was at the Wiltern in Los Angeles. It's probably 3,000 people, and I was far from him. Yeah, so it just happened. His eyes were in my direction, and it looks like he's staring at me. So sometimes you get lucky. And again, I like that connection.
Yeah. So great.
Always try and shoot the drummer.
Yeah. I have a thing with drummers. All of my worst scarring as a musician are a consequence of drummers.
I think there was even a band that did a song no one ever photographs the drummer. So I mean, I always tell people get the drummer, because that's the one shot that no one ever gets. So I always try and, if I have decent access at a show, I always ask if I can go behind the kit, even if it's just for one song, to get a couple shots of them.
Yeah, this is a great shot of Ozzy.
Why, thank you.
Yeah, that's quintessential Ozzy right there.
I think that's Black Sabbath, but
Yeah. Oh, what a fun shot.
So this one was, nobody can see, but Chino from the Deftones, he basically jumped off the stage and stood on the barricade and came into the crowd, or leaned over the crowd to sing. At the time when he did this, I was way up by the soundboard. So I was shooting this was Aftershock. I was actually shooting for Aftershock Festival. And as soon as I saw Chino jump off the stage, I go running as fast as I can. It was probably 50 yards to try and get this shot, because I had an all access pass. I was allowed to shoot it, but it's how long is he going to be there for? Is it going to be 5 seconds, 2 seconds, 10 seconds? So I was able to jump up and be right next to him and get the whole crowd and him. And this was, I think, used in a newspaper used it for a cover. It was an entertainment magazine used it as a cover for the Aftershock show.
It's cool, the lines, because you're kind of at an angle, the crowd enthusiasm, his expression. That's That's a great
But
shot.
you know what he said about the shot?
What's that?
You made me look fat.
Ah, see, I don't even see that.
Right. And that was the first thing he said. Oh, I look fat in that shot.
It's interesting what the eye will see, isn't it?
Right. Of course.
Depending on who it is and what they care about. Oh, that's a great.
I just love this shot of Hetfield. Like the way the light was coming, it's got that like sunset vibe and just like the rim light around his head.
Yeah. The blue on the one side and the sort of deep purple and russet. That's a really cool shot.
And that was actually at a sound check.
Oh, is that right?
That's why I'm so tight in, because he wasn't wearing any like his stage clothes. So I was just kind of doing head and shoulder shots, and I just loved it.
Wow, that's a great shot.
Thank you.
I mean, gosh, people who are only hearing this, they need to go to your website. We'll include a link to your website so that people can come.
Oh, thank you.
Are you? I mean, my instinct is that in the sort of stratification of rock and metal photographers, which there'd be a concomitant price, you're going to be up there. But having said that, if someone has the budget or whatever, are you available for anybody, or are you kind of booked out with labels and magazines who have you on assignment all the time?
So it used to be, I would tell like unsigned bands like, hey, you know, I appreciate your interest, but I feel too guilty charging an unsigned band, you know, a normal fair, you know, photography rate. So I always preferred to go through the labels to have them pay, or magazines to have them pay. But as of late, labels kind of reverse it. So they give a band the budget to record the record, do their photos, and do everything. So now it's bands hire me. So no, I'm pretty much available to whoever wants to hire me. How's that?
No, that's good. And so we'll you need to do some work on your website.
Yeah, I know.
But we'll point people. Is this the best place for us to point people?
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of stuff on Instagram and on Facebook, you know, but definitely my email's up on my website, or you can contact me through Facebook or Instagram, and I always respond. So
I'm over time with you more than I told you. No, I told you.
I'm a chatterbox.
No, I told you an hour, so I feel like I'm holding you hostage. Maybe if you're open to it, because there's so much imagery, and this is going to sound lame of me, but this is delightful to me to look at imagery. I genuinely, one of the first things I do every morning is I look at imagery for inspiration, and it's a combination of photography and, as I said before, illustration. So I love this. So I'd love to have you back again and talk more, and I can actually spend more time thinking about some of the areas I'd like to probe. But for today, to the capstone question I'd want to ask you is there? So you clearly have a gift here. Is there something that you want to do creatively, or maybe not creatively, but some sort of abiding passion that you want to see to later when time would permit?
Ooh, so are you asking me like when I stop shooting music, like my retirement plans?
No, more like the funny one is I asked this of Russell Allen from Symphony X, and he built a boat.
I have a story about Russell too.
Do you? Oh, you have to tell me before we go. But he built a boat, literally built a wooden boat.
Oh, wow.
And you know, some people, they want to do maybe acting, or they want to be in a musical, or they want to, you know, and so I always like to, just as a flavor of you as the person, this is clearly a gift, but is there some other thing that like maybe you do and I just don't know and we haven't talked about it, that you're really passionate about that is not photography?
I love photography, but it's definitely my job. I'm like kind of the worst person when I go on vacation. I don't want to bring a camera because it feels like work. But that being said, like I've always wanted to be like underwater scuba diver photographer. Okay. I love like snorkeling and that kind of stuff. And I'm not scuba certified yet, but I also, I signed up for glass blowing classes. I'm very much like, if I want to do it, I go do it. I snowboard, I wakeboard. I just rode my bike around. We went to Oregon last week and I rode my bike around Crater Lake. Okay. I like adventure. So I'll try about anything, you know, I had to the wave. Yeah.
That's cool. So
So there's not one thing.
Yeah. Well, and not everybody has that. And a lot of times I just hear, hey, we just want to get back on the road. Like there's literally nothing in my life but music and I want to go do more of that. Some people have like a thing that they really want to get to, but it has to come later in life when there's time. Before we go, you have to tell me your Russell Allen story.
Oh, it wasn't even that big of a story, but it just goes to show how much I hang out with bands way too much. So we were backstage at the Key Club in Hollywood, and I think it was for, it was either a Dime Bash or like a Metal Allegiance show kind of a thing. I think they were called Metal Masters back then. But he had a beer, and he's like, hey, no one has a bottle opener. Like, I don't know how to open my bottle. And then there was a whole bucket full of waters there. And I'm like, what kind of musician are you? There's a water bottle right there. He's like, I don't know how to do that. Oh my goodness. Give me your beer. Pop. And literally like an hour later, he comes back. Will you open my beer for me again? I'm like, come here. Let me show you how to do this.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh. You know, I have to, he's one, when I was talking to him, I had him on the show. He and I kind of hit it off. We did 7 hours.
Oh, wow.
Just crazy, like long. And then we spent 9 hours after that. So we talked for 16 hours straight. But he wants to make video games.
Oh, nice.
He's like a programmer, and or at least he has some ideas. So it's interesting to talk to people like yourself who are in the creative arts that surround and sort of drive forward metal and the culture. For me, so I'm really grateful to you that you spent some time. And if you're open to it, I would like to have you back and go deeper. I'll spend some more time going through your portfolio. And what I would maybe do, if you're open to it, is I'd select a bunch of photos that really, like pop out at me and ask you to go deeper on them. No
problem. I would love it. Okay. I hope I'm not boring. No, I just don't want to be boring.
No, you're not at all. Not as a person, and certainly not as a photographer. These are, I know I heard you say that it's your job, but wow, what a shot that is!
That was great.
If you guys are seeing this, it's a guy in a wheelchair crowd surfing. How awesome!
That was at the Big Four in New York, and I was shooting for Revolver and for Guitar World, and the editor or one of the execs at Revolver came up to me. He's like, best shot you've ever taken. I'm like, really? Not a musician, the guy in the wheelchair? But again, it's that eye contact. He just happened to look my way. There was probably 20 or 40 photographers for the Big Four in New York. And I just happened to get him looking at me. So it was timing and worked out great.
You know what? This is a good one to end this conversation on. And then I'll connect with you offline for a follow-up. But what I love about this image is that it celebrates, I think, what's best about metal culture.
Absolutely.
Right? This guy who loves the music, clearly he has this particular challenge, but all of the people who want to participate and support him in that are helping this dude crowd surf. It's an inspiring shot, like not to lapse modeling, but in addition to being cool, and that you captured the moment where we see this guy's eyes just up over the top of his wheelchair wheel. It also, there's a metal
family. It's our metal family.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I love this picture. I may have to. We'll get a link, and I may put a deep link directly to this particular photo. I think this is really, really inspiring.
Well, thank you.
Okay. I'm going to let you go, but I am going to send you an offline note so that we can connect and we'll go deeper. But for folks, this is Stephanie Cabral. She is very accomplished photographer. Her work, we've explored a bunch of it here, but not just a sliver. Really like doing such a great service to this music. And I don't mean to sound too high-minded about it, because the images themselves are thrilling and awesome and funny and all of those sorts of things. But like, you have to have someone who has this sort of gift to be able to deliver this. And so I'm so happy to have made your acquaintance.
Yours as well. Thanks, Peter. I appreciate that.
All right. I'm going to stick on the line. I want to say a personal goodbye. I'll play the outro for the folks that are with us on the stream here, and then we'll go from there.
Thanks.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.